Imagine this. You're walking through a city at night, rain tapping softly against the cobblestones. A shadow darts across the street. A wallet slips from someone's coat, landing with a wet slap in a puddle. No one notices, except you. You pick it up and see the cash inside, enough to pay for the thing you've needed for months. You look around, no cameras, no witnesses, just you and your conscience. Do you keep it or do you return it? Your heart argues one thing, your mind another. And that tug-of-war between reason and feeling, that's the battlefield where Jeremy Bentham built his philosophy. Because of him, morality wasn't a mystery whispered by priests or kings. It was a calculation. Pleasure, pain, happiness, suffering, all measurable and real. And if humanity could measure it, we could build a world governed not by power but by utility, the science of doing the greatest good for the greatest number. Before we dive in, this episode is powered by Strong Coffee Company, the protein-packed coffee that fuels both your body and your mindset. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com and use code VANCRUX1 for 20% off. It's London, 18th century. The smell of ink, smoke and ambition hangs in the air. The Industrial Revolution is shaping society, but morality hasn't caught up yet. Justice still bites harder at the poor than the powerful, and pain is treated as punishment, not a problem. Then enter Jeremy Bentham, a quiet prodigy who read history books at age 3 and took his degree at Oxford before most people finished puberty. He trained as a lawyer and quickly became disillusioned. He looked around and saw that law wasn't about justice. It was about tradition. It was about authority. So he asked a question no one had asked clearly before. What if the purpose of every law, every policy, every decision was simply to increase human happiness? That single thought, radical, elegant, dangerous, became utilitarianism. Bentham believed human behaviour could be explained by two forces, pleasure and pain. They ruled us as sovereign masters, he said. Every decision you make, every meal you eat, every friendship you form, every risk you take is an unconscious calculation of which option will bring more pleasure and less pain. He called this the principle of utility, the foundation of all ethics and law. You might recognise it now as common sense. Do what makes people happy. But in Bentham's day, the idea was a revolution. It stripped morality from the heavens and placed it firmly in human hands. He even built a system to measure it, the Hedonic Calculus, a way to calculate the moral weight of an action by looking at 7 qualities: intensity, duration, certainty, propinquity, fecundity, priority, and extent. It was the first attempt to quantify happiness itself, to make ethics mathematical. This episode is sponsored by More Labs. Check them out at morelabs.com and use code VANCRUX1 for 25% off the recovery energy drink company. Back to the episode. Bentham didn't stop at theory. He believed his principle of utility could rebuild society itself. He argued for universal suffrage, freedom of expression, and the abolition of slavery. He said women should have equal rights a century before it was remotely popular. He even extended moral concern to animals, writing, "The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?" Imagine hearing that in the 1700s, when most people thought animals existed only for human use. He was planting seeds that would later bloom into modern animal rights movements. Bentham also believed that punishment should only serve one purpose: to prevent further and future pain. To him, justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reducing suffering in the long run. And in economics, he broke ranks with Adam Smith and David Ricardo, arguing that sometimes the government should expand the money supply to create jobs. Early ideas that prefigured what we now call Keynesian economics. He wasn't just a philosopher, he was a humanitarian engineer. He even designed a prison, the Panopticon, a circular structure where every cell could be observed from a single watchtower, though the prisoners never knew they were even being watched. It was meant as a tool for discipline and rehabilitation, but it also became a haunting metaphor for modern surveillance, from CCTV to social media. Bentham dreamed of order, but his ideas warned of control. Even he couldn't predict that his blueprint for reform would one day become a blueprint for power. So fast forward more than a century later to 1967. A philosopher named Philippa Foot introduced a thought experiment that captures the core of Bentham's utilitarian dilemma. You're standing beside a railway track. Ahead, a trolley hurtles towards 5 people tied on the rails. On a side track, 1 person lies bound. You can pull a lever, diverting the trolley to kill 1 and save 5. Do you pull it? It's the ultimate test of Bentham's principle. The greatest happiness for the greatest number. To him, the choice would be simple. Pull the lever. The math is clear. 5 lives outweigh 1. But your stomach twists, doesn't it? You feel the moral tension between reason and empathy. Foot's trolley car problem, they're pretty famous actually, wasn't Bentham's creation. It was born later, but it perfectly captures the emotional gravity of his logic. It reminds us that utilitarianism, though elegant in theory, demands hard answers in practice, answers that force us to weigh life like numbers on a scale. Now, bring it back to your life. Every decision, big or small, is a ripple in the moral equation. When you comfort a friend, tip a barista, or choose to forgive someone instead of retaliating, you're adding to the sum of happiness in the world. When you lie, harm, or act selfishly, you subtract from it. Bentham saw every human being as a node in a natural network of cause and consequence, an architect of universal well-being. He believed that morality wasn't divine law, it was social mathematics. Every one of us, he said, is an agent in humanity's happiness calculus. And maybe that's what makes his philosophy so timeless. It gives meaning to every act, no matter how small. Bentham's philosophy didn't just stop at ethics, though. He extended it into every corner of human life, from politics to economics and freedom itself. He had some arguments such as individual and economic freedom, separation of church and state, freedom of expression, equal rights for women, the abolition of slavery and physical punishment, including that of children, recognition of human rights, the right to divorce, promotion of free trade and usury, and the decriminalisation of homosexuality. In a world still dominated by kings, clergy and inequality, Bentham's ideas were lightning bolts of modernity. He wasn't just writing philosophy, he was sketching the blueprint of the modern liberal world. This episode was brought to you by Liquor Gummies, the smarter way to enjoy your night and feel fresh the next morning. Grab yours at liquor.com, liquure.com, and use code Bankrupts1 for 20% off. Now, just a final thought. I hope you see what Bentham truly gave us. Not a cold, mechanical morality, but a map of compassion. He believed that the meaning of life was to expand joy, to reduce pain, and to make existence lighter for others. And though the world may still debate whether you should pull that lever or not, Bentham's voice whispers through time. The question is not what is right in theory, but what brings the most happiness in reality. Because in the end, the lever isn't out there on the railway track. It's in your hands every day, with every choice you make. So think about it. Whether you're an army in a war and you're having to sacrifice one battle for the betterment of the larger campaign, these ideas are everywhere in terms of utilitarianism. So is it something that you are going to incorporate?